A boy on a young dragon, flying into the teeth of a storm. His name is Lucerys Velaryon, 14 years old. His mother sent him to Storm's End to win a lord to her cause. A message, not a sword. He was promised it would be safe. But there is another dragon on the rock when he lands. A vast and ancient thing, gray as a thundercloud, older than the kingdom itself. Vhagar, and on her back, his uncle, the boy who lost an eye to Lucerys' knife and never once forgot the price. Lord Boros turns Lucerys away. The boy flees back into the rain, spurring his small dragon out over the bay. And the Great One follows. Arrax was swift. Vhagar was the size of 5 of him. In the lightning and the wind, the young dragon could not outrun the old. When it was over, the storm swallowed both of them. This is the moment the words ended. Welcome to Westeros Within, where the fires of history still burn. This is House of the Dragon, the true history. This is Chapter 2, Blood and the First Fire. The chapter where a war fought with oaths and crowns becomes a war fought with dragons, and the first blood spilled calls down 100 times its measure. 2 crowns and a letter. When last we left them, the realm had cloven in 2. In King's Landing sat Aegon, second of his name, crowned in the dragon pit with his grandsire's conqueror's crown, his sister wife beside him, his golden dragon Sunfire circling the city 3 times for all the small folk to see. On Dragonstone sat Rhaenyra, the rightful heir by her father's will and a realm's sworn oaths, crowned by her uncle and husband Daemon, before 300 witnesses, her belly still aching from the dead daughter the shock had torn out of her. 2 monarchs, 2 courts, 1 iron throne, and not yet a single blow struck. Both sides understood the same truth at once. This would be decided by dragons, and the side that gathered more lords beneath its banners would gather more of everything else. So they sent the ravens. And then they sent the riders. Rhaenyra sent her sons. Her eldest, Prince Jaehaerys, flew north to woo the Starks, the Arryns, the Lords of the Vale and the snowbound north. And her second son, Lucerys, Luke, 14 years old, she sent south. To Storm's End, to Lord Boros Baratheon, to carry her words and nothing more. The death at Storm's End. He should never have been the one to go, but Storm's End was close, and a prince's presence honored a proud old house, and a boy on a dragon makes a kind of argument that parchment cannot. So Rhaenyra sent him, with strict instruction. The histories agree that he was a messenger, not a knight. He was to win Lord Boros with words, and on no account to give battle. What no one in Rhaenyra's council knew was that Aegon's people had reached Storm's End first. Prince Aemond was already there when Lucerys descended through the rain. Aemond one eye, a sapphire set in the socket where his nephew's blade had taken his eye years before, when they were children at Driftmark. He had come on Vhagar, the largest living dragon in all the world, to buy the same lord's loyalty Rhaenyra was now reaching for. And Lord Boros had already chosen. Aemond had offered a Baratheon bride and a brother king's gratitude. Lucerys arrived with only a letter and an apology that he could pledge nothing. He was already promised to another. Boros was insulted. He gave the boy his answer and his leave to go. What happened next, the chroniclers fought over for the rest of their lives. By every account, Aemond wanted the boy's life, and the matter passed before Lord Boros, while Lucerys still stood in his hall. Some say Aemond demanded an eye, the price of his own, that he meant to gouge it out then and there. Some say Boros forbade bloodshed beneath his roof and bid Lucerys fly. Some say Aemond gave his word he would do the boy no harm within those walls. But the walls ended at the gate, and the sky belonged to dragons. Lucerys spurred Arrax out over Shipbreaker Bay into the worst of the storm, and Aemond loosed Vhagar after him, whether Aemond meant to kill or only to frighten, whether Vhagar slipped her rider's command in her bloodlust, the way the oldest dragons sometimes did, no man can truly say. Aemond himself would later claim he had only wished to make the boy soil his breeches with fear. What is certain is the ending. Vhagar's jaws closed around Arrax and bit him in half in the air. Lucerys fell into the black water of the bay, dragon and rider both, and the storm closed over them. 3 days later, the sea gave back the broken pieces of Arrax beneath the cliffs of Storm's End. The boy it kept. And from that night, Aemond Targaryen carried a second name. The realm would call him Kinslayer. A son for a son. The word reached Dragonstone, and it broke something in his mother. Then it reached Daemon. The rogue prince did not weep or rage or call a council. He sat down and he wrote a letter of his own. And where the boy's death had been a thing of storm and accident, what Daemon set in motion was cold, deliberate, and unforgivable. He sent to King's Landing for help to an old friend who knew its hidden ways. Mysaria, once his lover, the dancer from Lys, the realm would come to call the White Worm. Through her web, Daemon found 2 men. One had been a sergeant of the City Watch, a brute the histories remember only as blood. The other was a rat catcher who had crept the secret passages of the Red Keep so long that he knew them better than the men who built it. They called him Cheese. Their instruction was as simple as it was monstrous. A son for a son. They went into the castle by the rat-catcher's tunnels, into the very heart of the Greens. They bound and gagged the Dowager Queen Alicent in her chambers, and they waited. When Queen Helaena came with her children to bid her mother good night, they took her, and then they told the gentle, dreaming queen that they had come for a prince's life, and that she must choose which of her sons would die. She begged. She offered herself instead. They would not take her. At last, to save the elder, she named her youngest, the little boy Maelor, not knowing the child was old enough to understand the words his mother had just spoken over him. They killed the other one anyway. They struck the head from her firstborn son, the heir, Prince Jaehaerys, 6 years old, and carried it out of the Red Keep through the dark. There are crimes a war never recovers from. This was the first of those. King Aegon, when they told him, screamed for vengeance. Queen Helaena was never whole again, and the realm, which had until that night still half believed the lords might find some bloodless settlement, understood at last what kind of war this would be. An eye had been answered with a life. A life had been answered with a child. There would be no settling now. The War of Fire begins. The dragons woke, and the realm took sides. Daemon flew first. He took Caraxes north to the great cursed ruin of Harrenhal, the largest castle in Westeros, and won it without lifting his sword. He simply landed the blood worm atop its tallest tower and let the garrison look up. The Castellan opened the gates. From Harrenhal, Daemon's banners spread across the riverlands, and the Blacks held the heart of the realm. The Greens answered with steel and fire of their own. Sir Criston Cole, the Kingmaker, who had crowned Aegon and now served as his hand, took an army out of King's Landing and marched up the King's Road, putting castle after castle to the choice: kneel to Aegon or burn. Where they would not kneel, they burned. The riverlands ran red beneath him, and above him, in the smoke, flew the Kinslayer. Aemond and Vhagar became the terror of the Trident, the greatest weapon in the war, loosed without leash. Towns and fields and holdfasts went up in flame at his passing, and the small folk fled their homes by the thousand. No black dragon was large enough to face Vhagar in the sky and live, and both sides knew it. For now, the blacks held the better count of dragons. Rhaenyra had her own Syrax, demons Caraxes, the young dragons of her sons, the Velaryon fleet under old Corlys choking the gullet, and the loyalty of the north, the Vale, and the river lords. But the largest dragon in the world wore green, and one weapon, large enough, can outweigh a dozen smaller ones. The Greens knew it too, and the Kingmaker began to wonder how he might use the one beast no other could match, not by chance in the chaos of the sky, but on a field of his own choosing. He would need bait. He would need a dragon of Rhaenyra's, drawn down to the ground where Vhagar could fall on it from above. He found his bait at a little castle on the coast called Rook's Rest. The trap at Rook's Rest. Lord Staunton of Rook's Rest had declared for Rhaenyra. So Criston Cole marched his army to Staunton's gates and laid them to siege, burning the fields, slaughtering the livestock and the small folk, doing everything a man could do to make a desperate lord cry out for help. It was not a siege, it was a snare, and the lord inside, not knowing, sent his frantic plea to Dragonstone for a dragon. On the Queen's Island, they debated who should answer. It was Princess Rhaenys who flew. Remember her, the queen who never was, passed over for the throne not once, but twice. The living proof of the precedent the Greens used to justify everything. An old woman now, past 60, who had spent her whole life watching crowns go to lesser claimants. She mounted Meleys, the Red Queen, swiftest dragon in the realm, and she flew to Rook's Rest alone. She came down upon Cole's host in fire, and his men scattered and burned beneath her. And for a moment, it seemed the trap had failed, that one furious old woman on a scarlet dragon might break an entire army by herself. Then the sky fell on her. Aemond had been waiting, hidden, on Vhagar, the true tooth of the snare. And then, unlooked for, a second shadow. King Aegon himself, who had come secretly with his brother, wounded in his pride and reckless with wine, dropping out of the clouds on golden sunfire. 2 against 1. The largest dragon in the world, and the most beautiful. Rhaenys did not flee. She turned and she fought them both. Meleys was swift and savage, and she gave better than she got. She caught sunfire in her jaws and tore at him, and the golden dragon and his king were grievously hurt. Aegon flung half-burned and broken to the ground, bones shattered. Sunfire with a wing near ripped from his body. But while the Red Queen had her teeth in the king's dragon, Vhagar came down on her from above. 3 dragons fell tangled out of the sky and struck the earth together. Aemond and Vhagar rose again from the wreck. Meleys did not. She broke upon the ground, and her rider with her. The queen who never was dead. They carried Meleys' head back to King's Landing in triumph, and the small folk lined the streets to see the proof that a dragon could die. Lord Staunton's castle fell. His own head went up beside the dragon's, but the cost was hidden behind the triumph. King Aegon lay broken and burned, more dead than living, and would lie so for a year and more, his body a ruin, his golden dragon crippled. In his place, his brother would rule. Aemond One-Eye, Kinslayer, master of the largest dragon alive, became protector of the realm. The crown had won its first great victory, and it had lost its king to do it. So ends the chapter of the first fire. The words are spent. The oaths are ash. A boy fell into a storm, and a child lost his head in the dark. and an old queen who was never queen burned at last beneath the weight of the largest dragon in the world. And here is the cruel arithmetic the war now lays bare. Rhaenys is dead, and Meleys with her. Aegon is broken, and Sunfire is broken, and Aemond rides the sky unmatched on Vhagar. The Blacks have lost their command of the heavens. Rhaenyra still holds more dragons than her enemy, but suddenly, terribly, she has more dragons than she has riders to fly them. Beasts sit chained and idle in the caves of Dragonstone for want of a Targaryen back to bear, while the Kinslayer burns the realm unanswered. You cannot win a war of dragons with dragons no one can ride. Unless the Blacks were willing to consider. The blood of old Valyria had spread further through these islands than any Maester had ever dared to write down. Unless the dragons could be thrown open to men who had never been allowed to dream of them. That is the gamble we turn to next. The day a queen's heir offered a dragon to any commoner brave enough to climb on, and learned what such a harvest truly costs. They would call it the sowing of the seeds. Those who lived through it called it something redder. If you want to walk the whole of this war with us, chapter by chapter, from the first fire to the last, subscribe to Westeros Within, and ride with us into the next. The fires of history still burn. We will see you in Chapter 3.